Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at another new premium ship coming to the game. This time Tier 9 Baotou? Baotou? Apologies for pronunciation as always. But this is a Pan-Asian cruiser now that looks an awful lot like a Nevsky, doesn't it? But at Tier 9. It's a lot like Irian at Tier 8 though, in that it does not have a radar, but instead has a focus on torpedoes. This is essentially a down-tiered Nevsky with longer reload, no radar, and a focus on its torpedo power. Yes, you're seeing that right. That is 9 torpedo reload boosters on this ship. How on earth are we getting through 9 torpedo reload boosters when it's got a base cooldown of 160 seconds? We only have 20-minute games. Well, that comes down to the combat instructions on this ship. It's a 95% cooldown on your consumables for 15 seconds, and that's really important here. As with torpedo reload boosters, they happen instantly and then they go on cooldown for a very, very long time. So with this combat instructions, you're actually able to get 2 torpedo reload boosters in the time that it takes to actually use the combat instructions. So you can launch a set of torps, use a reload booster, launch another set of torps, use the combat instructions, and then instantly use the torpedo reload booster again. Launch your torps, and then because the combat instructions last long enough, it'll actually get you to the next torpedo reload booster that you can then use and launch another set of torpedoes. You're getting like 4 torp launches. We only have 1 set of torps per side, but that is a lot of torpedo power built into this ship, assuming you're activating these combat instructions. So how do we activate it? Well, I charge it up pretty much instantly there. It's getting kills or assists. That is going to give you 100% of the charge here. So expect these ships to, a lot of the time, be trying to yoink kills away from you, okay? I know it's good to have the assist thing there, but the way assists work in this game it's a little odd how they're calculated, shall we just say. It's most consistent to know you're getting the kill, and maybe not the best idea. We'll see how that plays out, but you'll also be able to get this by just hitting with your main guns. For every hit you get, you're getting 1% progress. And you'll start losing progress after 30 seconds here. So you need a lot of shell hits. Fortunately, the reload on this ship isn't too bad, but you're primarily building this up by getting kills, which I think is totally fine. It's not a consumable reload booster that we want to have all the time. I think we've seen that work out with Valparaiso rather poorly in constantly charging up an F key that is extremely powerful for consumable cooldown. It's a cruiser versus a battleship. There are big differences there. This is nowhere near as strong as that, though beware the torpedo power with this one. And perhaps that is why I would not necessarily recommend you build for torps. In this game, I'm running a bit of a lighthouse build. Tried more conceal-focused builds, as that is another advantage this ship gets over Nevsky, Donskoy, that sort of thing. Its concealment at its best is like 10.4 kilometers, somewhere in there. When you don't have a 12-kilometer radar, suddenly they're willing to give you much better detect. So there's an ability to stealth torp here. However, I just think, considering how long range these games are often played at, I would much rather build towards the main guns, as the main guns are quite solid here. You're getting full Nevsky gun power just with longer reload. So you have an 8.4 second base reload instead of a 6-second base reload on Nevsky. What this works out to is pretty much identical DPM to Donskoy, which is the tier 9 variant in the Nevsky line, except you have better shells. You get a little bit more alpha damage, but crucially, you're also getting the pen bonuses on the armor piercing, and the HE has slightly higher alpha damage as well. There, it has the same fire chance and the same pen, only 30 millimeters. Here, certainly, would be very nice to have something like IFHE, but it's 4 points to take, and oftentimes I'm finding I'm not fighting battleships that have 32 millimeters of armor everywhere. So I would rather take the HE and its fire chance and not use those 4 points. Maybe use them somewhere else, but it could be worth using for you. This is a DPM focused cruiser. This is a damage output cruiser. No utility here, radar, no hydro either, notably. That's going to come up later in this game. You're focused on damage output, so I want to be accentuating that as much as I possibly can. And considering how much of the torpedo power is not caught up within the torps themselves, but rather this consumable reload booster as well as these combat instructions, you're still getting most, or if not all, of the torp power, even if you're not really building for them with your commander. So that's where I'd rather build for the main guns, as they are quite solid here. You have very nice firing angles at 30 degrees forward and 30 degrees backwards. And the big feature of Nevsky guns, if you've never played with it, is just the incredible shell velocity that they bring. Even out to the max range here of 17.6, I can see like 18 kilometers here very easily, and you're getting a really easy 9.4 second flight time there. 17 kilometers, like 8.7 seconds. Better than Donskoy even. So they're big improvements to having these guns over something like a Donskoy. Something I haven't mentioned yet is actually the armor on this ship. It's actually a little better than Nevsky. Not that you would know it here, but when we're fighting something with 30 millimeters of overmatch, yeah, it's going to be quite painful. Nevsky has a 30 millimeter deck armor, but its upper belt is overmatchable. I believe it's 25, maybe it's 27. The functional difference there is that 406s will be able to overmatch your upper belt. With this ship, it won't. It's a 30 mil upper belt, and considering we're at tier 9, that makes a much bigger difference. You're fighting so many more 406 mil equipped battleships than you are at tier 10, where you see a lot more 457. Not always, of course, but there is a difference in matchmaker there. Here we're seeing just the absurd power of this ship and its torpedo reload booster. This Ohio, unfortunately, did not know what this test ship was capable of. I think as people understand what this ship does, they won't be pushing in. 13.5 kilometer range, they're going to stay away from it because that is ridiculously difficult to deal with. You notice how I didn't even use the final torpedo reload booster there, by the way? It's because at this point, I hadn't even realized that you would get 2 torpedo reload boosters in a single combat instruction. I was wondering later in this battle, like, wait, why do I have a combat or a torpedo reload booster available? As you'll see in a little bit. It's crazy to me that you can get so many done, but it makes sense why they gave it so many torpedo reload boosters then. Having to turn in here to avoid the torpedoes, we obviously in this battle, a very close one, which we love to see, need to get to the caps. But there's a Jaeger on our flank, so dealing with that without a hydro is quite scary. This is a notable downside of playing this ship. You don't have the ability to hydro for torpedoes, and while the maneuverability is okay when you're running a lighthouse build, you get your rudder shift down to a pretty comfortable, I think in the 6-second range, somewhere in there. Base, it's 11.1 seconds, so pretty sluggish there. So you're going to have a bit of a tough time dealing with torpedoes if you're playing alone on a flank, that sort of thing, against a destroyer, which I think can happen. You're not really as incentivized to play the caps quite so much because you don't have that radar. And since this ship wants to play flanks where the enemy team is pushing in, you're probably going to try to play on the weak side flank for your team, and that will result in maybe having to deal with torpedo DDs on your own, which can be a little bit difficult. As can pushing in these late game scenarios where we can't just pre-kite the entire game away. Sometimes you do have to push in, and that gets very awkward when we don't have a hydro, as there will be a lot of torpedoes coming after us if we decide to push into a lot of these caps. Mines, for example, why else would he be turning so broadside onto us? He's probably launched his torpedoes at us as he angles now to us. So I go bow in, trying to not continue to push so that the Lepanto doesn't get an angle on us, otherwise we would die very quickly. Still an above water citadel, as it is on Nevsky, and yeah, we end up eating that torpedo. You're trying to intuition dodge a lot of the time, I would say, when it comes to torpedoes, and that's not always the easiest thing to get. We don't have the best tools to deal with submarines either. No sub surveillance, which is quite rare, so I'm not going to count it against this ship too hard. But no hydro hurts quite a bit, and our ASWs are off the bow. They are bow launchers, so the worst possible ASWs. Very, very awkward to use. No plane-based. Effectively means you don't really have a tool to deal with submarines. So in this case, pretty awkward for us. Though I will say, having these consumables come back so quickly, thanks to these combat instructions, means we can damage control the ping and therefore avoid the homing torpedoes, which are quite deadly into cruisers. They essentially stop homing right on your ship, unlike battleships. They're the only ones that I find I can consistently avoid when I'm kiting away. I find I need to use the damage control when I'm playing a cruiser. So this damage control comes back even quicker thanks to it being a limited time usage one. So we only have 3 consumables base, getting up to 4 with taking in superintendent. I didn't find that to be too limiting because, again, cruisers don't take as long fire durations, that sort of thing. But it is worth mentioning, you won't want to be damage controlling your torpedoes, your main guns, that sort of thing. You will need to think about conserving these. Notice that we still have a torpedo reload booster. Yeah, it's something that I forgot a lot with this ship, is constantly using it over and over and over again. Having 15 seconds, you can see how at the 9-second mark or so, the torpedo reload booster is back up. I could have got a whole nother charge here. Not that it mattered, because we did manage to take out that Lepanto. Nice little exchange here at the end. We do need to get on the cap, though. Close games like this one. I mean, I haven't had a game this close in months, I gotta say, so I was absolutely loving this. That's not about the ship necessarily, but just about getting very fortunate with the matchmaker to have such a fun one here. We've got to get in the cap. Look at that. It's basically tied on the timer as to who will win. So getting on the cap early, very important, but it's a Jaeger. We don't have hydro. Very tricky to be pushing in. I think a lot of people will understand once they understand about what this ship is capable of. It's not going to be quite as powerful as you're seeing here. People aren't going to push it, knowing that it can launch so many torpedoes out. It'll be very challenging to find those perfect scenarios for it. Our Hipper is fortunately cutting off the angle if the Jaeger had gone towards the B cap. So considering I was still spotted, he kind of had to be over towards the 9-10 line. Slow down, turn in. A lot of torp intuition that needs to be had here, okay? It is very challenging to do this sort of thing. You gotta play a long time, have a good sense of where the torps could be coming from. If I die, I think we actually lose this game there. So very important that we avoided those torpedoes, even though we did not have a hydro. We'll take the E on one of the funnest games that I've played in a very long time. So how do you get this ship? Well, it's Admiral Bundles or loot box gambling. So at least there is a direct purchase option for this ship, but yeah, it's very, very expensive. You're gonna have to spend like $150 US or 37,505 doubloons. That is, of course, very, very expensive. These Admiral Bundles inflate the cost, and I am not a huge fan of that. This ship, though, I think is a lot better than Fort Worth. So if you're interested in getting one of these ships and paying a lot of real money for it, for me, I would be much more interested in this one. I think it brings an interesting, unique playstyle with these torpedoes. And you overall do have some very nice gun power alongside some decent survivability for your tier as a cruiser. Yeah, we're still taking hits to our superstructure in that. Fort Worth does have improved pen angles, but we're going to get over 2 million potential damage into this game. I did not find myself getting overmatched nearly as much as I do with Nevsky, partially because of the tier difference, facing a lot more 406s as already mentioned, but I do think that's a big deal to have the upper belt be 30 against those 406 mil-equipped battleships instead of like 25 or whatever it is on Nevsky, where it can get overmatched. I also was running Lighthouse builds, so having the rudder shift feel a lot better is very, very important for dodging a lot of shells at these longer ranges, which we will typically be playing at because the guns can support it. I will say it also has a little better turning circle radius. The Nevsky has 940 on Nevsky versus 850 meters on Baotou here. Baotou? Apologies, again, pronunciation. I should just stop calling it. This ship, we'll go with this ship, shall we? We are getting pushed to the corner of the map, by the way, by a destroyer. Yeah, we kind of got left alone on this flank, but that's where a ship like this one shines. Unfortunately, wasn't actually able to use the torpedoes on the enemies here, was pushed a little too far back. This was full Lighthouse build, including heavy HE in that, so maybe not the best idea, considering we couldn't stay within torpedo range. But we did manage to actually charge down the Oster once we got pushed all the way back to the corner. Perhaps he wasn't expecting us. But over 2 million potential damage into this one eventually feels pretty good. Although it's still 457. So you got to hope that you're not facing too many of those. But overall, I had a pretty decent time playing this ship. I think the DPM, while not amazing for its tier, we only have 145,000 HE DPM. Things like Sejong, for example, 288,000, but that's a light cruiser. that ship has way more DPM, but has way less pen and has way worse shell velocity. This DPM is very applicable to all stages of a battle, I would say. And we have this really fun torpedo gimmick here too, allowing us to dump out an incredible amount of torps, even though we only get one launcher per side. Sejong also gives you that ability to dump out an absolute ton of torpedoes, but not with these combat instructions. This is more of that heavy cruiser vibe to that torpedo with supplemental main gun playstyle that we find with the Pan-Asian light cruiser line. I think this is an interesting ship. Is it worth $150 US? Not to me, personally. I really would love for Wargaming to put out more ships that are for research points or coal or even steel, which we'll look at soon. There's a new battleship for research points. I just felt like I was playing a ton of battle cruisers, and that recently with Fort Worth and Congress and all that, I needed some DPM goodness to get a little reset. So we'll take a look at those ones soon, don't you worry. But I gotta say, pushing into this, you just can't be pushing into this ship. This Schroeder here it's essentially a 1v1 here. Colorado range, I don't expect to be dealing too much damage to us. Schroeder, well known for being pretty good at these closer ranges. But with this many torpedoes and our guns that are going to light quite a few fires, assuming we're not taking IFHE, I did notice a big downgrade in the consistency of lighting fires when I took IFHE. So I'd rather not personally do that. I mean, yeah, we're going to light them up with 3 instantly after he damage controls there. And the ability to bounce all of his shells pretty much. This is a very, very strong cruiser at the tier, though it lacks the team play and utility that we get usually with the Soviet cruiser line, the Nevsky line, where 12-kilometer radars are extremely powerful, and even just having something like Hydro. That is a very, very good consumable to have. No access to that here, but in exchange, you get some of the best torp power at your tier, alongside some just very comfortable guns to use. It's DPM. The shell velocity here is very, very nice. If you don't like leading targets at range, that sort of thing, you just want to chill and relax, this is a pretty good option for you. Especially for those of you that already have Irian and want a similar playstyle at a higher tier, with a little more extreme ability to dump out absurd amounts of torpedoes. I had a good time. Like I said, I had a pretty good time with this ship. This improvement to the upper belt armor here is very, very much appreciated. You still have the nice icebreaker off of Nevsky. Otherwise, the ship is the same armor-wise. So spaced armor on your Citadel helps a lot. 30-degree firing angles also pretty nice. So against a lot of other cruisers, you should be able to angle and still use all of your main guns, unless they have improved pen angles there. Going flat broadside, probably going to get dev struck in a ship like this one, so try to avoid that as much as you can. The build I was running looked a little something like this. Yes, very, very greedy lighthouse build. I don't think I'd necessarily recommend everyone run that. I think you can swap out heavy HE and SAP and maybe go with a little something like this. Much better detect than 11.5 here, and that's still getting the very nice 6-7 second rudder shift, allowing us to maneuver and avoid a lot of enemy fire. You could also just go full concealment, and that allows you to get your detect down to pretty comfortable 10.4 or so, somewhere there. Yeah, 10.4, although that rudder shift does suffer just a little bit. You really do need to be making use of these consumable instructions here, combat instructions rather, if you want to get through all of your torpedo reload boosters. You probably won't. A lot of the time, you're going to realize, like I did, that these games just... ships aren't within your torp range for the vast majority of the time. It's really nice to have the combat instructions available when the enemy team does push your flank. Then you dump out all those torps. Maybe the torps get you a kill, and then you can just cycle over and over again like that. Pretty cool. But it's not like you're going to be using these all the time throughout the entire battle. The torpedoes just don't have enough range to reach the vast majority of these high-tier games that are played at pretty extreme ranges. I suppose another option for you is just to get an Irian. I don't think it's available currently, but I think it's a part of the ship rotation. And yeah, it is ship rotation. It's not in right now, and it's not coming back next update, so maybe a few updates from now it'll come through again. But that gets you pretty close to this playstyle at a tier lower. Different ship, of course. You get chappy guns, the 150s, rather than the 180s like we see here off of Nevsky. That is a notable difference. This is a very expensive ship, and I really wish they would maybe add some of these for more normal resources in the game that you can earn, or maybe even just more tech tree lines. That'd be kind of cool. We're getting to the point where we're getting full lines in the premium side nearly. This could be a line with Irian and this ship, and then maybe one more at tier 10 to be more of a torpedo heavy cruiser, or not just pure light cruiser like Jinan line, focused on torpedoes, right? It's a bit like the American premium battleships, the Ohio, Georgia, Massachusetts, West Virginia 44, that sort of thing. Oklahoma at tier 5. I mean, you'd have to slot in a tier 6 yet, but you'd have a premium secondary battleship line all the way from tier 5 to tier 10 almost. Maybe we could get some like tech trees wargaming instead of charging like over $150 for each of these. I don't know. I think these are very, very expensive, but I did have a pretty good time playing this one. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.